tips based on my experience, and this is kind of to help you maximize your chances of being published. And it's one of those things that, as I'm sure you all know, is you kind of need that experience and insight in order to kind of be successful in the process. So hopefully you'll find this session useful. So as you all know, blogs or opinion pieces are quite different to academic essays and articles, and it does often feel like there's a kind of disregard for these types of pieces in academia, where there's this greater focus on academic publications as part of your record for, you know, applying to PhDs and then postdocs and lectureships after that. But they do have their own kind of important place within academic and research circles. So firstly, writing blog or opinion pieces helps you to kind of communicate your work more accessibly to a wider audience, and this enables it to have a greater impact on people outside of academia. So at the end of the day, you know, especially in our sector where funding and opportunities are quite scarce, it matters that your research has relevance to people and the current context. So these pieces provide a way through which your work can kind of be read and recognised more broadly. Secondly, academia and research is often conducted in a kind of ivory tower, which feels unrelatable and inaccessible to a vast majority of people. So these pieces help us to kind of tackle academic gatekeeping and kind of continue the conversation in wider circles. So in certain fields, you know, there are non-academic experts which you should be interacting with, and these kind of pieces act as a bit of a bridge for collaboration. Thirdly, if you're interested in working in a think tank or research centre like I do, you have to be able to communicate your research to policymakers, and this requires much of a less academic style. It's kind of easy to alienate these types of readers if you write in purely academic terms, and you have to remember a lot of these people don't have the same academic background as we do, so you have to be mindful of that. So you kind of always have to think before you're writing as to who your intended audience is for your article, and then formulate a plan accordingly. So Zishan asked me to speak a bit about how to write a blog piece, and I find this is also similar to how to write an opinion piece, because in both you often have a kind of major argument or point that you're kind of trying to make. So I think what I'm going to talk about today kind of applies to both of those types of pieces. So I'll talk you through my writing process, but of course this isn't the only way that you can go about writing a blog, but hopefully it might prove kind of useful for you all. So the first step is to kind of pick a topic, and in my case, I usually write in response to something that's kind of ongoing in the news, and through which I can kind of communicate some of my key ideas or aspects of the research that I'm currently working on. So, for example, Zishan mentioned that I was working in Pakistan for some time, and I was working primarily on a policy memo on decolonization. So at the same time, I also wrote blog or opinion pieces during this writing process to kind of respond to ongoing discussions of decolonization. So this requires having an active eye on the news so that you can quickly respond to it and inject your own ideas into discussions on that topic. So, you know, the more that you're aware of what's going on, the better. And that kind of involves not only reading the newspapers and outlets that align with your own political views, but also looking at those that don't. So some blog pieces might be specifically aimed at the academic community, but it is also appropriate at times to choose a topic that appeals to a broader readership so that you can kind of have that wider reach that I've already mentioned. And this is especially true if you're working on policy ideas, because these have real world impacts that affect most people. So you need to be able to talk to the general public. Finally, it's the nature of news that different writers tend to write on the same topics when they're relevant to what's going on in the present day. And it's okay if you want to do this, but it does mean that you need to have something different to say, or you need to come at it from a different angle. And this is often where academics and researchers like yourselves can kind of strive, because you know all of your topics in great detail, and sometimes more than people who might be writing on it from different backgrounds. So this is hopefully an area in which you guys can kind of excel. So then the second step of the process is to pick a publication. And I think we all have ambitions to write, pieces for the top publications, and that's a great ambition to have. But you have to be able to pick your publication carefully, because each publication has, a different kind and a different size of readership, and your piece must be tailored towards them. So for a more academic or evidence-based piece, you might pitch to a think tank publication like PRISA or Equi. But for a piece more in the realm of ideas and current affairs, a newspaper is better. So the idea itself should also be very strong, rather than purely aimed towards getting your name into that specific publication. You should also always be aware of the guidelines that each publication gives for a blog or opinion piece, because you'll find that some of these are more appropriate for you and your specific article than others. So, for example, one top publication might have a word limit that's too short to convey your whole argument, or it might not allow for detailed referencing, which you need for more evidence-based publications. So you have to have your idea very firmly in your head before you even pitch the idea to a publication. The third step is pitching the piece to a publication. So as with the writing guidelines, this process varies by publication. And how you go about it will be written on a publication's editorial page. So make sure you double check how they want you to pitch the piece. So always check this in advance, because obviously if you do it wrong, you probably won't receive a response at all. And it might make it more difficult for you to pitch to them in the future. So in most cases, you'll pitch a rough idea in a few sentences to the editor and attach a copy of your CV, because ultimately their decision of whether or not to accept the idea and then maybe publish later on will be based both on the strength of your idea and also your education and experience. So with regards to your CV, make sure it speaks to why they should publish your piece on this specific topic. So although you might be published often a lot in one area where you're kind of a recognized expert, this doesn't automatically mean that you'll be published when you try and work on a different topic that's, addressing a different issue. And obviously having more kind of articles under your belt and in reputable publications will obviously help your chances as well with pitching articles to get published as well. So this seems like a really basic point, but obviously use really polite language in your email, because it's your first introduction, to an editor and to that publication, and first impressions really do matter. Also make sure that you don't write your pitch in too much detail, because they'll likely not read it or be gripped by it. So as I say, each publication will have details on their website about what you need to do in your pitch. So just make sure you follow that and you'll be fine. So in some cases, once you've written quite extensively and have a lot of publications to your name, you might actually be approached to write a piece for a publication. So this, of course, is an honour and recognition of your work, but you have to actually make sure that you consider whether or not you can firstly write on the topic that they've asked you to address, and also whether you want to be published by this publication in the first place. So it can always seem, quite like a nice moment when you're asked to write for someone rather than pitching yourself. But at the end of the day, it does matter where you choose to put your name. So make sure you take the time to consider the publication, its reputation, and whether or not you can speak confidently on that particular topic. So just make sure that you're a bit choosy about that. So the fourth step is the desk-based research, which obviously you all have familiarity with given your academic backgrounds. But I would always suggest kind of compiling this research and sources into a separate document rather than, just launching straight into writing the article, because most of the time you're not going to write your best work if you kind of take that approach. You should kind of formulate your idea more fully before you do start writing. So as you may be kind of responding to something in the current news, it is key to understand and communicate this context to show the relevance of your piece. So this is a really important first step in the research process. And you should also be aware of what has already been written, you know, on this specific topic, especially by others who have written on similar topics for the same publication. So editors are less likely to publish your work if it's too similar to anything else that they've already published. So your work has to kind of be unique in some way, ideally from all other articles on the topic, but also especially for ones that they've already published. So there's one optional thing that I'd note here at this stage of the research process, and that's to reach out to experts or relevant people and ask them a few questions so that you can formulate quotations based on their responses and include them in your piece. And I think this really elevates your article because it provides something that might not be available in articles on similar topics. And the good thing is with you guys as being, you know, in academic or think tank sectors, you have quite a strong network of people to draw on, and you should make the most of that by reaching out to people and seeing if they'd be happy to provide quotations for your article. And I've found it's generally best to email them your questions so that they can kind of complete their responses in their own time and around their schedule. I also tend to offer to show them the final draft before publication to check that they're happy with the context in which their quotation is used, both because this kind of builds a sense of trust so that they're more likely to accept the interview in the first place, but also to kind of prevent unintentional misunderstandings of what they've tried to communicate through your writing. So you should kind of treat every interaction with anyone else in the process as relationship building, and try and do that as empathetically and professionally as you can. So for some more tips, I would suggest that in this kind of initial stage of research, when you're trying to gather your thoughts, it might be really useful to do it in a document that helps you kind of begin the writing process, especially if you're struggling to get started. So in this document, you could write the draft title, the context of your piece and why it's relevant, what your kind of main point or argument will be, and how you're going to explain this in bullet points, which will then end up being the kind of paragraphs of the main body of the article. So you should also be aware, you know, of the deadline as well. And this is not just the deadline agreed with the editor of the publication, but if you're responding to kind of current events, your piece will be most interesting when that topic remains relevant. Sadly, we all know that people have short attention spans, so they want to move on, you know, to what's next in the news. So you always have to bear this in mind. But equally, the speed at which you're trying to, you know, get that piece out there and published should never be at the expense of the kind of quality of research and writing. So the fifth step is, of course, the writing step, and it's really important that you don't kind of put this off for too long. It's definitely the most intimidating part of the process, and you might be a bit anxious to get started. But this is really good advice for any writing you do, whether it's a dissertation or a journal article or anything. And it's because it's best if you can start writing as soon as you have your idea and are fully immersed in the research, because everything's very fresh in your mind. And obviously, you know, your first draft doesn't have to be the one that you send off, so you can take your time with that afterwards. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping through. Yeah, so next I would suggest double checking the writing guidelines again for your specific publication before you start writing, because if you say get some of the style or something wrong, then you're going to just spend a lot more time on editing than you need to do. So it's better that you get everything right from the beginning. In terms of, say, the word limits, how they expect you to write in a specific style, and how to cite sources. So most publications give a word limit of between 800 and 1,200 words. and they'll detail how you cite your sources and how you're meant to write in a particular style. So I've given some of the main examples that you'll see coming up in guidelines on the screen. So if you stick to these closely, it really maximizes your chances of being published. This is one thing that you have under your control. So make sure that you get it right. It just maximizes your chances. And in blog or opinion pieces, your paragraph should generally be shorter than in academic writing because it looks a little bit less intimidating and more accessible to readers. So when you guys are, reading through newspapers and stuff, especially online, you'll see that generally each paragraph is quite a bit shorter than it would be in, say, one of your essays or articles. So definitely bear that in mind. And if you're writing for a broader audience, make sure you avoid using really technical language and long sentences with many clauses. A non-academic audience should kind of understand the relevance of your topic and your argument without having to look up, every other word or difficult concepts. So moving on to the kind of structure of the writing, the first paragraph should really grip the reader and talk to the current situation of the context of the topic, such as how it kind of relates to the current news or why it matters. So you're trying to set out exactly what it is that you'll be talking about. And this first paragraph shouldn't really be information or data heavy. It's more just a kind of doorway through which the reader can kind of step into your article. And then moving to the main body of the text, and this is obviously the majority of your piece, you'll try to flesh out the topic and prove any point that you wish to make. And each paragraph should be used to make a primary point and show why this point is relevant to the topic and how you can back it up using evidence, data, or quotations. And again, this is another area where most of you will be able to outperform other writers. And this is because you have those strong research skills to kind of provide hard-hitting facts. But you have to make sure that you do it in a way that's accessible so that non-academic lay people can understand. So each paragraph should kind of lead into the next, as you would in an essay or a different type of article. And if you're kind of primarily making an argument, it should be, written as formulaically and clearly as possible. For example, using firstly, secondly, thirdly, etc. And finally, the last paragraph. Sorry, I keep skipping. Finally, the last paragraph should be the most gripping one. So you should briefly summarize yourself, but do not repeat all of your main points. And you should kind of end with a call to action or emphasis on why this topic matters. So often, the first and last paragraphs will be the ones that will be most remembered by the readers. So bear that in mind when you come to write them. And so the final step is post-publication. The whole process doesn't really end when your piece is published. And this is where actually the real engagement begins. So first, the most important first step is to read your piece through as a published article on the website. And this is to check that the editor has agreed to any changes that you've made. And so that you feel that actually what you wanted to say and what you did say in the agreed draft is what has been written on the website. So if there's been a mistake or you feel they're shaping your writing in a way that you don't like, you should raise this with them straight away and get it changed, or in worst case scenario, even removed. So from personal experience, I've had editors change my language to make political points that align with their own views rather than mine. And unfortunately, you kind of feel a bit of a power imbalance with the editor because you know that they're very established in their field and they're in a position to determine whether or not your piece is published. But at the end of the day, this piece is published in your name, no one else's. So it really matters what language and what ideas are attributed to you. Secondly, the key with your writing is, of course, that it gets read and sparks discussion. And you have to facilitate this yourself by actively sharing it around. So the best ways are to, of course, share it with your professional social media. I generally use LinkedIn. I think that's the the best and least toxic, especially as compared to X. And also with your networks via email or WhatsApp. Another good strategy is to create a kind of or it's called a broadcast on WhatsApp, where you can choose all of the contacts that you think are relevant, and then every time you have an article published, you can share it with them. That's another good strategy. And I personally list all of my publications on LinkedIn, and this is both to kind of keep up with what I've done personally, but it's also great that when you come to apply to jobs, then prospective employers can kind of find everything they need in one place. And I would suggest that you share your article more than once on social media, because obviously not everyone will see it the first time. So you can kind of mix and match the way that you're talking about your work and showing how it relates to ongoing news and so on and so forth. So once you've been published by a publication, there may also be an opportunity to write for them on a more regular basis, and you should ask if that's possible if you're interested. But I would suggest that you try and maintain a balance between regularly publishing with one publication and then exploring others as well. As mentioned, each publication will have different readerships and different purposes. So that's all of the kind of main tips that I had, and I've shared my email address on here if anyone wants to get in touch, and I can share the presentation as well if that would be helpful. But because I have no doubt that all of you are very good researchers and writers, I wanted more to share the kind of tricks of the trade, if you will, about how you can best be published. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Hello, Mary.
Hi.
I have a question.
Please wait. The moderator will ask you to, then you can ask the question. So thank you, Mary. It was amazing, and I loved it. I have 2 questions, and then I will invite the participants to ask question as well. So how to find out, like, my idea is worth enough, I should write a blog or piece on it. So how can I find out? And similarly, my the internees here at the PRISA, they would also need to know that what they are thinking is worth enough. They should write blog on it or piece on it.
I guess it's always a good thing to discuss it with other people, which I've often done. But I think, at the end of the day, if you found something that you think is relevant to the current context and you feel that you have enough expertise to be talking about it, then it will probably be a valid idea. And, at the end of the day, until you pitch it, then you're not going to know whether it's going to be accepted or not. And I'm sure most of us who are experienced in this field have pitched things and then thought that wasn't the best idea in the world. But, it does happen. And we all make mistakes. So yeah, so I would say discussion with other people who are experts in your area is really useful. And yeah, especially if you know anyone who's written extensively or is an editor themselves, then they're always good people to talk to. But yeah, I think those are the 2 key points. If you feel confident writing about it, and if you think it's particularly relevant to the current climate, then those are the main considerations.
Yeah, and the second question is about how main body of the blog should be organized, how the argument should be organized in the main body of the piece.
Yeah, I didn't want to be too prescriptive about this, because I think everyone writes in a different way, and I think it's important to have that diversity of the ways in which we write, because otherwise, if every piece was the same, it would be boring, wouldn't it, to read blogs. So I'm personally a very systematic person. So, I'll either do it theme by theme. So obviously, because if you choose a theme, then that particular area that you're writing about relates to each other. So that would be the main way I would go about it, is to group things by theme. But obviously, again, it really depends on the topic of the blog piece. They're all very different. So you have to really do it on a case-by-case basis and judge accordingly. But the most important thing is that one paragraph follows the other. You know, it's that very basic point in writing of your final sentence relating to the first sentence of the next one, and just keeping that kind of progression so that every paragraph has its place. And obviously, as you go through the drafts of the piece, the more that you'll change it so that it fits in, in quite a seamless way. So it really does depend on your own style and also the specific topic. But you will find over time that you will probably adopt a specific style that works for you. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So Tahreem will ask the first question. Tahreem, please.
Thank you so much. I have done my internship with an German NGO, and I work for them, and I have written several news articles for them, and they demanded that I need to provide references as well. So when I started my master's in Thailand, and I have learned about the opinion pieces, then my teacher asked us to not provide any kind of references. Then a line draw between the news article and the opinion pieces. And if we talk about blog posts, so my question is, if we are writing a blog, then is it necessary or unnecessary to provide references or original sources into it, or we can just treat it as an opinion piece?
So it really depends on the specific guidelines of the publication, as I say, because each one will be completely different. So that's the most important port of call for you to make sure that you get published by them, is that you stick to their guidelines. So most of the time they'll say either use hyperlinks, probably the most common one for opinion pieces and blog pieces. And then some, like I think PRISA does it for some of their sources as well, is to use footnotes and bibliography. So you have to be prepared to do one or the other. And then, as you say, with some opinion pieces in newspapers, actually, I've personally included hyperlinks, but they often take them out, which I find really frustrating. But, you know, it's their style at the end of the day. But my own personal preference is, if you have the choice, it's definitely better. I would personally go for hyperlinks. Because the more that you can back up what you're saying, the better your piece is going to be. And you feel in yourself then that you've written something that's evidence-based, and you can say, look, this is exactly where I get this part of information from, and so on and so forth. So for me, as a reader and a writer, you just think instantly from that piece, it's much stronger. So I would always say, if firstly, check the guidelines, that's the most important. But secondly, if you have the choice, use references in whatever style you prefer to do it, because it just improves your writing, I would say.
That's right. I also agree with that. And means Umar, yeah, you can please ask the question. And at the end, you would also conclude it, because Umar is, you can say, the head of the desk at the at the PRISA. So he is the person who mostly accept or reject the blogs.
Thank you, Zishan. Thank you very much, Dr. Hunter. We've been missing you, and PRISA does not like missing its friends.
That's true.
Yeah. And it definitely is something that I've been thinking about, because, as Zishan said, I'm the person who's been looking into reviewing the blogs before publication. And I've always thought that especially the citations, they are of all type, because there are many styles of citations. And I think we need to publish on the PRISA website one particular way of writing the points of how to write the blog and how to cite, especially. My question, Dr. Hunter, is about the last paragraph. You mentioned that we can include a call to action. I was thinking, I was a bit confused about the call to action, because the suggestions or the solutions, they naturally flow from the causes we identify of an issue, behind an issue, and usually we suggest that the rectification of such and such cause would would constitute a road of action. So how important is it to have one call of action in a paragraph in which you're actually summarizing and concluding your write-up? And more importantly, would it not be out of place to invite a suggestion or a call to action when another piece may be warranted, may be wanted, may be desired to come up with all the solutions and what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you for the question. I personally included it there because I'm now got this very specific policy head on because of the job that I'm doing at the moment. So obviously most of our reports and our blog pieces then about our reports are mostly about addressing policymakers specifically and saying this is what we think you should do. So if you're working in the policy area like I am, then it is important to have that kind of call to action at the end. But obviously, that is in relation to the main argument of your topic. So I include call to action because I think it sounds a bit more, you're trying to like really pull in the reader to do what, to basically bring them onto your side. So whether it's a policy recommendation like mine would be, or whether it's just a call to action based on the primary argument that you're making in your piece, is how I would view it. But ultimately, again, it completely depends on the topic of the blog piece and who your intended audience is. But I think the basic point I wanted to make with the final paragraph is that you are inviting your reader to believe you or to do something according to the argument that you've laid out. So that's why I think it's important to have that sort of kind of gripping final paragraph. But again, it completely depends on, the specific topic. But I hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you very much. It does. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Sophia, please, you can ask questions.
Hi, my question might be a little bit simpler. So usually when I write, what I struggle with, I tend to write too much. So I was wondering if you have any tips on how I can sort of turn a denser piece of writing into something a bit more concise and more engaging. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a really good question because I don't know about anyone else on here, but I always find that the word limits are always too short. So it's definitely a relatable issue. Yeah, so I guess you have to try, because it's impossible to communicate everything you want to within 800 to 1,200 words. So what I would try to do is maybe judge it based on what you think your strongest arguments are. So you might think, one of them you want to include, you've got a paragraph which you think is important, but maybe it has a little bit less data or evidence to back it up than your other ones do. Then I would generally take that out in favor for one of the stronger paragraphs. But I think, again, it depends what you're trying to do with the piece. But if you think, say, you're working on policy, you might think one particular point is a little more achievable than another, then you might decide to include that one. So I think it's really, again, with trying to make it a seamless piece, what relates to each other the most. So if you're feeling you've got, say, 4 paragraphs, 3 of them really closely relate to each other and you feel you can move from one to the next quite seamlessly, then I would naturally include those as well, rather than one that might be a strong point, but it's a little bit less relatable to those other points. So I think as a connection you can build between them, the better. So yeah, I would go based on how strong is the argument and also how much it relates to the other paragraphs, I'd say, are good ones. But you do have to, unfortunately, it's painful sometimes when you've written a longer piece and you think all of this is excellent and I don't want to take any of it out. But sometimes you just have to kind of bite the bullet, unfortunately, and get rid of it. But the good thing is, that might mean that you need to write a longer form piece. So if, say, you haven't pitched it yet, you might say, actually, I might go to a different publication and write a long form piece, which might be 2,000 words. So again, this should be something that you're thinking about before you get to that stage. If you think you can communicate it all within the word limit, then that's great. If not, you can look to writing a different kind of piece as well. But unfortunately, it is painful, and you feel it in your soul when you have to take on something that you don't want to. So, but you do have to from time to time.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other question? Okay, so until I get another question, very important question in the present time, Mary, means how to use ChatGPT, how to use AI, writing blog.
This is I don't know if I'm the best person to ask this, because I'm someone who I don't use it at all, to be honest with you. I find, especially with the writing process, that you shouldn't ever use it. That's my personal opinion, because people can tell instantly that you've used ChatGPT, and that's not good for your reputation. And yeah, it's pretty obvious, and it kind of lacks originality. So I would generally say never use it for writing. I think there's a point to be made that you can use it for the research process. You know, if you're not doing a PhD or like a high level degree, there's a thing to be said for using it to do the literature review, some people would say. But it's not something I personally do. So I would be a bit of a hypocrite if I advised you all to use it, because I don't. But then a lot of people would consider me a dragon, or would say a dragon or a fossil for not using the latest technology. So yeah, it's up to you, I suppose. But you know, people think that it's completely without its flaws, which it's not. You know, there's something that we can do as people with detailed information to do that literature review that it would miss. And I think you also have to consider why it's picking up specific articles and stuff at the top above others. So it's not something I rely on personally. I know people that do, and they use it effectively. But I think it shouldn't be something you rely on, because at the end of the day, we're all researchers. We should be using these skills ourselves. So if you can use it to refine your work, then I wouldn't knock that. But yeah, I wouldn't say relying on it is a good idea. Otherwise, we'll all become useless at one point if it replaces us.
Understand. So it means AI can be a good assistant, but it should not be, you know, the main.
Yeah,
you can say the source of your writing.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see that there's some backlashes in the news now against certain aspects of it. So you have to be aware of what's going on and how up to date the system you're using is, and where, you know, how it operates. So it's quite a lot to consider. And if you've all done a degree, or you're working towards a degree, so you know how to do those things. And sometimes cutting corners does not work in your favor, I would say. So yeah, just be careful with it.
Got it. Any other question? And I would ask the last question, because no one else is asking, but it's relevant. It's like, Mary, when you write blog, or you write means like piece for any newspaper or any other media, like how do you get inspiration? Like whether because you are means watching news and you feel like, okay, this is very important point, or you think like because one topic you are writing for a long time and new things come and you feel like, okay, this is good, and you can connect your arguments you already established in any other blog and you are going to promote it further. Means how do you get inspiration to write a blog?
Yeah, I think all of those things kind of play into it. But I guess if you're really living the research that you're doing, which you hope you would do if you're, you know, it's your job or you're doing a degree, you know, it should be out of passion. And although you very much have to take time away from work and not overwork, but at the same time, when you're in your free time, you should be kind of relating that to the current situation, things you're seeing, the things you're experiencing. You should be kind of living the research. So then for me, if I'm watching the news and something comes up which makes me think, oh, that relates to what I'm doing, or I have something to say about that which is different, then that's most of the way that I've come to write my pieces. because I think, yeah, the best research you can do is when you're looking at it holistically and you're thinking, how is this relevant to the current situation? Which I think is really important, especially if you're working in policy, but also more broadly as well. So it's just having that eye open to what's actually going on in the world, because it's quite easy as a researcher to get detached, you know, from the world and just focus on your own little thing that you're working on. But, you know, it should have real world life implications. So the more that you can see it in the things that you're doing outside of work, the better, I would say. So yeah, just trying to reflect on it in a non-workplace situation, I find is quite useful. And that's most of the time when I've seen something, someone said something in the news, then that usually sparks me to write a piece. But as you say, if you've got that kind of, you've been working on a topic for years or decades, then obviously each time it comes up, something new said, then you might be one of the best people to say, this is how important this new discovery is, or whatever, because you are the one who understands best how like research and work on that has progressed over the years. So yeah, so I think it's having that understanding and then kind of applying it to your normal life, I suppose, is the best way.
Cool. Any other question? So one question from Usman Ali. Mary, can you read that question?
Yeah, can a blog or opinion article be academic in nature? Like we can discuss it with a theory. Yeah, so I mean, this is why sometimes think tanks like PRISA and others have blogs, is because obviously they are by nature quite academic institutions. So most of the people who will be going onto PRISA's website and reading the blog will be other academics and researchers rather than, or policymakers, and not lay people necessarily. So again, it really depends on what you want to do with the article and then choosing the publication accordingly. So you can definitely write an article that's more academic in nature for, say, PRISA, than you would write for, you know, a more mainstream magazine or blog. And it's completely valid to do that. You know, I mean, I think the piece I wrote for PRISA's blog was also on decolonization. It was a comparison of decolonization of laws in Pakistan and India. So obviously, you know, most people aren't going to be thinking about that over their morning coffee. So, you know, yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to write these more academic pieces. But again, that's why consideration of the publication is really important, because some, you know, centers will love that and others won't really have that much interest in the more theoretical side of things. So, but yeah, definitely a valid option.
So finally, then, like, if there's no other question, I will request Umar to give final remarks about his experience, like, as a reviewer or the person who is on the desk, like, reading all our blogs and accepting and rejecting them. So he could be like very relevant person explaining PRISA policy, and also what anything he would like should be added in this discussion.
Thank you, Zishan. Thanks a lot, Dr. Mary Hunter. We definitely are wiser at the end of these 50 minutes. As Zishan mentioned, the blogs, the writings that I've been reviewing, I've always been struck by the idea that we need more of uniformity. We did not even have published on our website, we did not even have a word limit or the format of citations. Nothing was there. Now we are going to do that, and that was one major issue when I reviewed the articles. So I was basically focusing on any grammatical issues or any, or as an onlooker, just looking at the article and deciding whether it deserves a forum like PRISA. So that is all that we were doing, but we are going to be more methodical and systematic from now onwards. I am really thankful, Dr. Mary, because your spirit always wandered the corridors of PRISA. It was lovely to hear, to have you in person, and it is your commitment to and passion for PRISA that shows that anything new that you've learned, as you mentioned in response to one of the questions, that you this is something that you learned. In fact, in response to my question, that this is something that you learned, that you can include a call to action in the last paragraph, and this is something that you learned at your new assignment, the work that you're doing now. So it shows your commitment to PRISA, that you care for PRISA and you care for it to do well. We definitely would be looking forward to more of that from you, because a whole world is always opening up to an inquisitive mind and to a researcher. It is opening up on a daily basis. So we look forward to hearing from you and getting enlightened by your thought more frequently. And we would request that PRISA would not want to miss you that much. I am really thankful to you.
Thank you. Well, that's really kind, and it's exciting to see PRISA having all these new interns. So it'll be exciting to see what direction you guys help to give it as well, because I'm sure Zishan and Hori and Uma will be keen to get you all on board and getting your insight to shape the organisation. So it's all exciting to see.
Yeah,
thanks
perfect. Thanks, Mary. I would add something more because our interns are here. And this was our first session for them, and the discussion is more about how to write blog, and we are expecting them to write blog until within 1 week. So next Monday or Tuesday we will have another session as well. This coming Friday we're also planning induction. Huri will announce, because she is the main person organizing all this internship program, and we are expecting means the blog piece from them, our interns, and Umar will review all of them, and the best one we will also publish it on our website. And this is like 3-month plan, and in that 3-month internship program we will invite Mary 1-2 more sessions as well, and we will be in touch. And I'm expecting like our interns will not make us disappointed, and it's very good opportunity for them to learn, because in this way, in this 3 month, they could be able, when they finish their internship, they could be able to join any research organization and think tank. And we will try our best to give them more and more, so that means the quality of their work should be enhanced after their study. Not only if they even want to be in academia, so the blog writing is very important there. They want to join research organization, think tank industry. So without writing a good blog, you can't be good. You can say that the researcher there are good. You can't add value to their work. And even if you are a person who is not interested joining any organization, just as a civil society member, just as a citizen of any country, so writing a blog piece is very important. So I'm expecting all of my interns, all of the PRISA intern, so they will write a wonderful blog based on their expertise, the area they're working, and all the guidelines Mary means you can say discussed here, especially about the first step of the blog writing. So you should also consider it very importantly, and write your blogs right in a concise way, but it should be like very well discussed. And the conclusion and introduction should be like very attractive, just like I would add that. And looking forward to read your blogs. And now Huri might want to say something, and then finally we will finish this event.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your collaboration and your support. I really appreciate it. And thank you for our new arrivals and their attendance. Just a few points that I would like to highlight. First of all, I would be grateful if you can send me an email and a phone number that you want to join the WhatsApp group for PRISA. so we can add you in the WhatsApp group, so we will be in touch. For the next week, we would like you to pick any blog based on, the topic is based whatever you like, the topics that we are following on PRISA, any category. Pick one topic, write down a blog, around 700 till 1,000, and send it to me. The same email that I reached you out.
Or otherwise, like if you send us today the 3 main topics you are interested in writing, and then Huri, you can approve which one is more
No, I want
relevant.
them, I want to see their perspective. That's why I didn't
Okay.
pick the free ones.
Okay.
Yes, I want to
Yeah.
see how they will pick from now, so we can see how they will change at the end. That's why I
Yes,
didn't
yes.
pick the ones. Yeah.
Yes. And I will also request, please, your topics must be related to PRISA's main areas. So means we are focusing on South Asia, and we are focusing on the South Asian migrants in UK, so how they could be integrated, and something else like which is related to the South Asia and also could be related to the migrants, South Asian migrants in UK. So if you will be focused on our main areas of research, that would be great.
Yeah, they have to pick it from PRISA website. That's why.
Yes,
So it would be
exactly. Yes.
aligned. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any questions, guys?
And also, like, there's one page on PRISA website and Write for Us. And this page was also designed by Dr. Mary when she was working with us. So I'm also sending you the link of that. You can say that page, and it will also be helpful for you. I'm sending in the inbox. Okay, how to say?
I have received a private message saying, when is the deadline for the blog? I would appreciate it if you can send it by the one this week that we are, the Friday. So before Friday. The deadline can be Thursday at 11 UK time. If it's that clear. Any other questions?
Yeah, and we will try to create the group like on Microsoft Team in the form of the class, just like mostly we do. And if that would not work, so then we will go for the WhatsApp, and we will prefer more Microsoft Team group, because that will keep the the mobile number, everything, also the private and confidential. And in that, you can say all the events we can organize in that group as well. Microsoft Team
Yes.
group, and anything related, the links could be shared as well. We will try our best to create that first, and if that would not work, we will go for WhatsApp then. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Then. Yeah.
Yes, so no
And-
questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here and contributing. I hope the best for the following week. It was really nice to have you, Mr. Omar. I didn't get the chance to speak with you, but thank you for the presentation, Dr. Murray, and I hope the best. And thank you, Dr. Zishan, for your input and your
You're
collaboration.
welcome.
Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.